This movie starts at a university in Kyoto, Japan. There's this Chinese guy named Chen Zhen who's studying there. His teacher, Master Hu Yanjia, sent him to Japan to learn about modern technology, hoping he'd use that knowledge to help protect China. One day, after classes, there's a commotion at the university gate. The Chinese students, led by a guy named Shaen, are having a showdown with Kenzo from the Black Dragon Dojo, which is known as Famous and Respected Association in Japan. Shaen ends up giving Kenzo a beating because they think the Black Dragon Dojo is behind some Chinese students going missing. At the same time, Chen Zhen passes by, picks up some dropped lecture books, and accidentally saves Kenzo when he pushes Shaen away from him. That evening, Chen Zhen headed back to his dorm near the campus. He was surprised to see Shaen as his roommate. They introduced themselves and quickly became acquainted, probably because they're both Chinese students studying abroad. Next day, those Black Dragon Dojo group show up on campus looking for trouble after the fight from the day before. They're flexing their muscles, making fun of Shaen and his gang as they walk by. The Black Dragon Dojo members call them an Asian sickness, which really ticks off Shaen. He tries to stand up to them, but those dojo guys are pretty good at martial arts, and they put Shaen down. When Chen Zhen sees his roommate getting beat up, he steps in to break it up, but those dojo people refuse to make peace and continue to provoke Chen Zhen. Finally, Chen Zhen loses it and takes them all down with his killer slap move using just one hand. After that, Chen Zhen's name becomes famous among the Chinese students in Japan. Meanwhile, Chen Zhen is trying to make some extra cash, so he takes a job washing dishes in a Chinese restaurant when he's not in class. On the other hand, his classmates Hoko and Kana are on the run, being chased by the Black Dragon Dojo gang. To escape, they dash into the restaurant where Chen Zhen works. When the dojo gang checks out the place, they're shocked to see Chen Zhen there, so they decide to leave, not wanting a repeat of what happened on campus. Hoko is all grateful and starts liking Chen Zhen after he saved her. Later that night, Chen Zhen and Shaen headed to a restaurant where other Chinese students were having dinner. They met a couple of Chinese students who had just finished eating. After exchanging greetings, these two students then headed back to their dormitory. Unexpectedly, they got ambushed by the Black Dragon Dojo group and got unconscious. Right at that moment, the Japanese group secretly whisked away the two Chinese students they had attacked to their headquarters, all on the orders of Shiji Ito, a young guy who was second in command at the Black Dragon Dojo. Switching to General Yamada's place, who was Hiroko's dad. Some Japanese military personnel showed up at an underground prison where lots of Chinese students who had gone missing were being held captive. It turns out the Japanese military had been kidnapping Chinese students studying in Japan to experiment with a super drug that could enhance human physical strength. If these experiments worked, Japan wanted to beef up their own military. The doctor in charge of these experiments told the general and others that he needed Chinese individuals who were physically fit for the experiments to go smoothly. Sometime after that, General Yamada invited Fumio Kawago, the main leader of the Black Dragon Dojo, for a chat. They talked about having a friendly martial arts competition between Japan and China. The idea was to find strong people who could be used as test subjects for the super drug. But Kawago rejected it because of the strained relations between Japan and China in recent years, especially since the primary goal of the Japanese military was to find Chinese people considered potential test subjects for super drug research. Yamada and others appeared disappointed with Kawago's opinion, so they decided to remove him from the Black Dragon Dojo group. Kawago was pretty mad and stormed out of the room. On a different day, right after their classes were done for the day, Hoko approached Chen Zhen, who was on his way back to the dorm for dinner. Chen Zhen, with no other plans for the evening, happily accepted Hiroko's invitation to have dinner together, which brought a smile to her face. When evening rolled around, they met up at a Japanese restaurant, where Hoko shared her fascination with Chinese culture, especially its famous martial arts. Chen Zhen was thrilled that she felt this way, and he was about to show her some Chinese martial arts moves when Ito suddenly showed up and ruined their dinner. Hiroko was annoyed by Ito's presence because he was the fiancé her family had arranged for her, and she didn't like him. So she quickly invited Chen Zhen to leave, and they ended up sitting together on a rooftop, enjoying the beautiful night in Kyoto. After that evening, they became closer and spent a lot of time together on campus. Meanwhile, Shaen kept investigating the mysterious disappearance of his friends. He and his group suspected that the Black Dragon Dojo was behind it all, but they didn't have any proof to take action against the group. While they were discussing this, Chen Zhen showed up with Hiroko, who brought posters of all the missing Chinese students to aid in their search. Shaen and the others expressed their gratitude to Chen Zhen and Hiroko for being willing to help find their friends. One night, as Chen Zhen was creating posters for his missing friends with Hiroko, he got a surprise visit from his friend, who told him that Shaen was being held hostage by the Black Dragon Dojo. Without thinking twice, Chen Zhen and his friend rushed to where the Black Dragon Dojo members were, armed with katanas and ready to take on Chen Zhen. Unexpectedly, Chen Zhen managed to confront and disable all the Black Dragon Dojo members who had come, despite them having weapons. After getting the upper hand on the senior members of the group, Chen Zhen finally rescued Shaen, who was tied to a tree. Because Chen Zhen had no intention of killing the Black Dragon Dojo members, he chose to heal them all before leaving, as they seemed to be in pain after being beaten by him. On the flip side, Hiroko had a meeting with her father, Yamada, who was pretty upset about her relationship with Chen Zhen. Yamada reminded her that Japanese people should stay away from Chinese people and ordered her to marry Ito. Hiroko couldn't say no, even though deep down, she wanted to be with the guy she loved, regardless of where he was from. Meanwhile, Koigo was having a good time with his first disciple, Ito, playing traditional chess. During their time together, Ito confided in Koigo about Chen Zhen, the guy who had defeated many members of the Black Dragon Dojo. Koigo tried to reassure Ito by telling him that he had left the Black Dragon Dojo group and handed over control to Ito to manage the group. Later on, Koigo, curious about Chen Zhen's widely talked about skills, intentionally went to the restaurant where the Chinese student community hung out. There, he met Chen Zhen and challenged him to a traditional chess match. According to Koigo, true greatness in martial arts wasn't just about fighting skills, but also required smart thinking to beat an opponent. Chen Zhen gladly accepted the challenge, and they had a serious game of traditional chess, with Chen Zhen ultimately winning. Koigo then expressed his admiration for Chen Zhen's cleverness in the game and revealing that his teacher was Yan Jia, a legendary figure in the martial arts world. This revelation surprised everyone in the restaurant, including Koigo himself. He admitted that he admired the person who had trained Chen Zhen. A few days later, Shaen and his friends gathered up in a treehouse to chat about their plan to find proof that the Black Dragon Dojo group had kidnapped their friends. Sadly, they figured out it would be tough to take on a group with the Japanese military backing them, so they scrapped the plan. When Shaen met Chen Zhen, he expressed his disappointment to his friend for inviting Hiroko into the Chinese student gang. Shaen believed she was Yamada's daughter, the guy behind their friend's kidnapping. He even thought Hiroko might be a spy for the Japanese military, trying to get info about Chinese students. Chen Zhen, just learning this info, hurried to meet Hiroko, who was hanging out with Yamada and Ito. At that moment, she admitted that she was Yamada's daughter. Ito then challenged Chen Zhen to a fight for the general's daughter. Chen Zhen stayed silent and didn't accept the challenge, deciding to leave Hiroko, thinking he had already lost the love battle. A little later, they kept experimenting with the super drug on the missing Chinese students, but sadly, it didn't end well for them. Their bodies couldn't handle the super drug, and they perished. Meanwhile, Kana showed up out of the blue to give Chen Zhen a scolding for not being a true man after leaving Hiroko, without putting up any resistance against Ito for not standing up to Ito, even though Hiroko loved Chen Zhen. After hearing Kana's words, Chen Zhen went up a hill to think, and he made up his mind to fight for his love. The very next day, Chen Zhen headed over to the Black Dragon Dojo, all on his own to take up Ito's challenge for a fight. They both threw down all their martial arts moves, and Chen Zhen almost had Ito cornered, but Ito decided to play dirty and used his katana to hurt Chen Zhen. So they declared Ito the winner, and Chen Zhen had to face the fact that he couldn't be with Hiroko. That night, Hiroko couldn't take following her dad's orders anymore, so she ran away from home. Chen Zhen quickly found her, confused and seeking shelter in the pouring rain. He invited her to crash at his place for a while. On another day, Shaen and his gang finally tracked down where their friends were being held hostage. They tried sneaking into the building to gather evidence, but they got caught by a lady martial artist and the guards. They ended up as experimental subjects themselves. Turning to Hiroko, who was with Chen Zhen, she told him she wanted to go to China with him and said she'd be waiting for him at the port. But just as Chen Zhen was about to follow her, he got word that Shaen had been captured by the Black Dragon Dojo and was being mistreated in public. Without thinking twice, Chen Zhen rushed to rescue Shaen. When he got to the spot where they were showing off Shaen, he quickly defeated all the Black Dragon Dojo members present and set Shaen free. With the last of his strength, Shaen told Chen Zhen what had happened to their friends, who had become test subjects for the Japanese military superdrug experiments, and then he passed away. Furious, Chen Zhen immediately went to the place where his friends were held captive. He took down all the guards around the place, entered the building, and had to face off against the lady martial artist. But thanks to his martial arts skills, he defeated her and made his way to the underground chamber. There he confronted Ito, who was all set to fight him. Surprisingly, Chen Zhen managed to win the fight, even though Ito had taken the super drug, which was supposed to boost his physical strength. Chen Zhen then searched for his captive friends, rescued them, and found some documents that proved Japan's plans for experiments related to the Northeast Asian War. As he tried to get his friends out of there, Yamada and his military crew surrounded them. In that tough situation, Chen Zhen's two friends decided to sacrifice themselves to save Chen Zhen from the explosion that rocked the whole place. In the movie's ending, we see Chen Zhen leaving the place where the experiments happened. He's got proof that the Japanese military were making a super drug for their military plans. He gave the proof to his friend to report it to the right people. At the same time, he rushed to the harbor to find Hiroko, but sadly, he got there too late because she had already sailed off to China. The moral lesson is, when you're not sure, challenge the other guy to a game of chess to win the girl's heart, and always have an umbrella handy in case you need to rescue her from the rain.